Well, hello there. I'm Andres Isaac Alvarez, and if you're into television animation and streaming, you might know me as a director, storyboard artist, or storyboard revisionist. Now, after 25 years in this vibrant industry, I'm thrilled to be the lead instructor for storyboarding for streaming. I've even chipped in on a bunch of productions with my story contributions along the way. What makes my program awesome, you might ask? I've actually been in the trenches and know my stuff. You'll pick up on-the-job skills like animatic editing, extractions, merging, 3D camera work, and advanced storyboard revision techniques. Plus, you'll master the art of the studio test and learn to maximize your skills using Adobe Photoshop and Toon Boom Storyboard Pro. But it's not just about the technical stuff. We really dig into the art of storytelling, covering everything from composition, thumbnailing, shot structure, camera angles, and cutting patterns. With every sequence, you'll get live critiques and detailed feedback, helping you grow and thrive as an artist. Ready to learn from the best? If you love listening to Rachel Green on the ADC Podcast today, the best way to show your support is to give her a follow across her social media platforms. For those looking to bring the same talent to your own team, Rachel is available for hire for your next project or production. Just head to the links on your screen right now to connect with her directly. Thank you so much for tuning in and supporting the ADC Podcast.
Hello, everybody. I am Andres Isaac Alvarez, and I am the host of the ADC Podcast. I have an extremely special guest, Rachel Green, a storyboard artist who I truly admire. Rachel, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you on.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, no problem. And you can refer to me as Andy throughout the rest of the podcast. I
Okay.
never want to make anybody say my actual name. But people were getting confused. They're like, "How come you never introduce yourself? Like nobody knows who you are." Like, so I'm like, "Oh
Okay.
yeah, maybe I should do that." Yeah. um, but like I said, I am a huge fan of your work. I kind of came to know a lot of your stuff through LinkedIn. LinkedIn has been sort of my, one of my most favorite places to not only to like look for, different, job stuff or, catch up with friends. Um, I remember it was like a good friend of mine was like, you got to get on LinkedIn. You have to do it. And I remember going to the website and thinking like, wow, this is so ugly. Like, why would I ever want to be on here?
Right.
But like, it just looks so corporate and just so boring. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
gosh, like no, this is never going to work. And he's just like, trust me, get your resume, just put it on there and just, and lo and behold, I mean, for a good portion of time too. I remember I was getting offers just through LinkedIn. Like LinkedIn was like the place for me. I don't know if you've had any success on it or anything, but
Yeah, I'd say back during the boom, like during COVID, I got some tests through LinkedIn because people were more open about sharing opportunities on there, but the last few years it's been pretty dry, as I'm sure you've experienced.
oh my gosh. Yeah, I was kind of thinking to myself, like, a lot of your experience, I think you were what, you came on into the industry a little before COVID, like maybe what, like a year or two just before COVID
Yeah.
hit?
Yeah, in college I interned at Cartoon Network in 2017. Yeah, yeah.
Oh my
So I
gosh.
was in college
Wow.
in Ohio from 2014 to 2018, and it was kind of like that perfect time. So I
Oh,
interned at Cartoon Network in 2017, and when I was there, they were giving us the impression that it was like the best time ever to get into animation. I remember
wow.
they had us all at like this lunch table, like talking that first week. I think it was like one of the heads of the studio was talking to us, and he's like, "Perfect timing, guys. This is the best possible time you could ever be getting into the business. This is going to be great." And I'm like,
Wow.
"Awesome. I made the best choice of my life, obviously." Um, so Yeah, and a couple years later, right after I graduated, they asked me to come back and be a production assistant on Tig and Seek in particular. I don't know if you remember
Wow.
that show, but it was kind of killed in the HBO Max massacre along with a few
I
others.
I think I do.
Yeah.
Yes, I think. Yeah, I had a show also that didn't quite make any crazy waves and immediately got canceled on HBO Max as well. But um, can you explain to the viewers, because so many of the viewers will never know just how magical that Cartoon Network building actually was. Um, I mean, I think I found a website that actually has remember the old like hallway where like everybody drew. I feel like
Yeah.
there's like I can't remember the name of the website, but like there was like detailed pictures of that
Oh, like how
entire.
they did the 3D scan before the
I think,
building got sold. Yeah.
yeah, I think that was definitely one of the things. But like, what was that like? So I'm guessing, were you originally from like the Ohio area? Was that like where you had grown up?
Yeah, yeah. I'm from a little town called Jackson in Ohio. It's
Okay.
almost in West Virginia, very near Point Pleasant, where the Mothman legend happened. That's how I introduced the town. I'm like, nobody knows anything about this area, but they do know about Mothman, so that can kind of give you an idea of where I live. But that's where I grew up, and I went to college at the capital, Columbus, where Ohio State is. But I went to an art school there. So I got pretty
Nice.
lucky that I just cold applied on a whim to the Cartoon Network internship one summer and I got accepted. So I kind of have
Wow.
got to thank for everything really. So
Can I ask, like, was drawing and art, was that something that was in your family, like, prior to you, or were you sort of like the first, artist to burst on the scene? Like, what was it like, kind of growing up and being creative?
yeah, I would say the only person in my family that was even remotely artistic was a very distant cousin in Puerto
Okay.
Rico, if you can believe it. So my grandmother was Puerto Rican and she had a ton of siblings and there was one person who was an artist and that was pretty much my only frame of reference. So like everybody I was around had no interest in
Oh, okay.
arts or anything. My mom was pretty creative, I guess. She was in theater in college and did some traveling theater there. So I
Nice.
was kind of exposed to that stuff, but nobody really, drew anything. So that was kind of just something that I did on my own that I was attracted to. So
And was it, you know, early Cartoon Network stuff that you were watching, Nickelodeon? Like, what was your sort of like, you know, was it? I'm guessing too, like, I'm of the generation where like Saturday morning was like the only time we got like our like weekly dose of cartoons. I mean, we had cable growing up, so I was able to get like, some cable stuff, but it really wasn't like that era yet, where things were really exploding. And so like, what were you watching? Were you just watching whatever was on TV, or did you have like your favorite shows? Like, what was that about?
yeah, it was mostly stuff on TV. I would just go back and forth between Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon. I wasn't a big Disney Channel kid. I'm not sure why.
Ah,
I remember going to Disney Channel and just being like,
nah.
this really isn't for me. I'm going back to Cartoon Network. I'm going back to Nickelodeon, which is strange because I love the Disney feature movies. Like I had like all the VHS tapes when they first came out. Like I think they brought them out of the vault or whatever, like in the late 90s,
Yes.
which is around
Yes.
like when I was really young. So I
Wow.
had a ton of those and I watched those and then it was just the rotation between Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network like over and over.
Those are like the clamshell VHS, right? Where they were like the big sort of
Yes.
like, I heard the reason they did that too was they wanted to, like, when you like stack them like on a shelf, they look like books. Like that was sort of the idea
They
behind
did.
those.
Yeah, I don't think we ever displayed them as books. I think they were more haphazardly just thrown in like cabinets. So I never really got that impression that they would look nice like
Right.
that. That would have been nice to
Good for
experience,
you
but no,
though.
it was yeah,
Because when you see stuff stacked nicely, that means you're not actually like actively using it. So it is nice to know that like
right.
your VHSs were probably like, bursting at the seams, hadn't, halfway watch through. Dude, my my daughter is 3. She has like a tablet, and she loves like her Disney Plus and Paramount Plus and stuff. But I remember my mom had sent me a bunch of stuff from when I was younger, including a VCR, bunch of VHS tapes. She's like, I'm not going to use any of these. So, she just sent them all to me. And I just like set everything up, put everything together. I have sort of like a little retro gaming, nook in my garage. And I was like, oh, I wonder if I can just like set up one of these, my VHS and just see if it works, and just
Hmm.
start, putting tapes and everything. My daughter was so transfixed. Like it was amazing because she still likes to like hold things and press
Yeah.
buttons and see things moving and like hear the sound of things. Like there's so much like sensory things that I think she really like enjoys that you just don't get when you're just like pressing, apps on a tablet. I can appreciate it coming from, that earlier area to like, wow, look at how, easy it is now to like do stuff. But it is kind of amazing to see like how magical that experience is. My wife won't let me put a TV in her room with her own VCR, which I'm like really bummed about because I
Hmm.
really want to get her this Disney Princess TV. It's like all pink and it's like I want to say from the 90s or the like
Yeah.
mid 2000s. I don't know if you've ever seen them online. They're super expensive.
Yeah, I think so. I've seen ones like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's like also like a SpongeBob one, whatever, but
There's a
I'm on
Shrek one too.
oh, a Shrek one. Yes.
It
Oh
looks
my
really
gosh.
crazy.
Oh my gosh. Like to me, that's the coolest thing. But my wife's like, there's no way she's gonna have a TV in her room. Like, just no way. I won't
Yeah.
allow it. So I'm like, okay, fine. So, but it is really exciting to know that like you actually appreciate VHS and like
Yeah.
I always feel that shows my age, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's just so excited to like go to Blockbuster or go to
Hmm.
Hollywood Video. Yeah, I grew up in California, so those are the two main places. But we had a ton of like mom and pop places too that were like completely like kind of dirty and dingy, kind of like arcades in a way.
Yeah.
And I remember just like going through the aisles and finding movies that I like totally based on visual too, like not like, oh yeah, like I heard this is a good movie or not. I would literally just look at the covers, almost like books, and just be like, oh, that looks interesting, just based on the cover art.
Yeah.
And then boom, take that home and like, see if there's anything interesting in it. Sometimes there were just, not great movies, but
Yeah, I
um
think for me in particular, I was right on the line, like
okay.
age-wise, where I still got to experience all that stuff. Like I remember this is a very specific memory, but I remember
Okay.
we had VHS tapes up until Finding Nemo came out after
Oh,
it was released in theaters. And we got the VHS tape. This was like what, 2003, 2004.
I want to
And
say at least
then
2003, at least.
yeah, and then they released a DVD, and then my parents got the DVD player, and then we got it on DVD. So we had 2 copies of it, and I remember that was our
Wow.
very first DVD was Finding Nemo, so
Like when that came out, this is another thing that's like definitely dating myself right now. I remember when I first got DVD and I still had sort of like the old school TVs, like like not a widescreen or anything at that point. But I remember the DVD I had got. I want to say it was like the movie Goodfellas, like the Martin Scorsese like Goodfellas movie that I really love. And I remember I had to actually flip the disc or put in like a second disc because
mhm.
there wasn't enough data on the
Yeah.
current DVD. You know what I mean? Like it was just
Yeah,
such a
yeah.
and I had a cousin growing up who had Laserdisc. I don't know if you've ever heard much about Laserdisc at
A
all,
little
but
bit, yeah.
yeah, and that thing was like massive. That was like an actual like record that you had to like midway through the movie, through like the best part of the movie, flip it over. But I remember at that time they had like director commentary. They had all behind the scenes stuff, which was so exciting. And like, but yeah, that transition I remember was a really like incredible thing. Just seeing like the technology. I remember like as DVD was coming in, that was sort of the beginning of me getting into animation. Like late 90s, early 2000s. Um,
Mhm.
and talk about, I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but like you talked about the sort of slowdown in animation and what that's
Mhm.
like in this current time. I remember getting into animation and people were talking about like how tough the 90s were. And I thought like, oh,
Yeah.
the 90s were, huge. There was never like any shortage of things to watch.
Right.
At least that I thought. I had
Yeah.
Batman the Animated Series, I had Ren and Stimpy, I had, Rocko's Life, I had The Simpsons. I mean, I had anything I could think of. Like it's every genre was coming out. But I remember a lot of I don't want to call them old timers, but a lot of the people from like the previous generations were saying, save your money, like these jobs are, very seasonal. I remember they were
Mm.
saying, and then I remember one of the sort of senior guys was like, just remember this. He's like, the future, and I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, every job you're ever going to have is going to come to an end. We're only on something, for a certain amount of time. And especially as storyboard artists, he's like, we don't really have a home. We're
Yeah.
just, we go from the next thing to the next thing to the next thing. He always
Mhm.
described it as like every 6 months to a year, the view out of my window changes, and that was his
Yeah.
way of kind of like, in a way, kind of preparing me, for the, the
Yeah.
road ahead. I have to say, I feel sort of lucky that from 99, to I want to say 2023, 2024-ish
God,
was
that's a long
that's
stretch.
yeah,
Crazy.
I mean, I definitely like was around in, I think I would say like another kind of, golden age, because, I was the last generation to actually have like paper. Like when my
Yeah.
first job, it was actually still done on paper. You could hear people like sharpening pencils. You could smell the pencil shavings. Like I remember
Oh,
like
that's cool.
coming home from work and my hands were filthy. I mean, you could see I wear, my,
Yeah.
little smudge guard now. And I remember that transition from paper to digital. We actually we none of us had computers either, by the way. We
Mhm.
had just like our regular like art desk, and our computer was the copy machine. So you would go take your drawings, go to the copy machine, blow them up, you know, uh, basically do your cleanups on them. And if you didn't
Yeah.
like them, you went to the copy machine again. It was hilarious. There's like maybe like 7 copy machines. I remember if one went down,
Wow.
we'd all freak out. It was like no internet or something, we'd all get
Mm.
like freaked. And then I remember like very slowly I started seeing um people talking about, okay, this is eventually going to go the way of digital. And I think that was another great sort of VHS to DVD moment, in the industry
Yeah.
to watch things, go from, I had, I don't know if you had one of these, but the old Wacom bamboos where it was like you were
Yes.
drawing here, but your head was looking up here, and it was like a
Mhm.
disconnect, and it was so hard to draw for me. I remember thinking like, I can't do this, like I can't transition in digital.
So I got a Wacom bamboo. It was those like this big and it was blue
Mm,
in 6th grade because I was on DeviantArt probably way too young and I begged my
deviant
parents
art.
like I have to draw like the rest of these people on this website or I'm going to like lose my mind. So they bought me my first tablet and it was the blue Wacom little bamboo and I
Oh my
think
gosh.
just because it was all I knew, like with the computer, I got used to it very quickly. And then it was strange when I finally got a Cintiq in college. It was like, oh, like this
Oh,
is so much better.
right. Yeah, because if a lot of people don't realize, like, so much of like what we do as artists and in drawing, it's that looking straight at what you're doing, and actually, I had a friend, this is like hilarious. He complained about the Cintiq because he said his hand kept getting in the way because he was so
What?
used to looking up at a screen and not having his hand there.
Yeah.
When he started like drawing with a Cintiq, he kept saying like, I keep my hand keeps getting in the way, and I'm like, bro, it's just like real drawing, like that's
Yeah.
it
It doesn't
was
make any
so,
sense.
it was so weird. I was just like, but if you think about it, like again, you're like almost like retrain yourself in a whole new. I remember, I don't know what your first software was when you started going digital, but I think for me it was like, it was like Photoshop. Gosh, definitely when you could own Photoshop, like of that era. But I remember just thinking like, wow, this is so different, but at the same time, like really addicting. Like, what was like your digital transition like? Did you feel hesitant, or were you just like, I'm all in, or like,
Well, I think I was so young and impressionable. I was what, like 12, that I was just
okay,
like, this is the best of all time. Like, I can just draw on the computer and then it's immediately available for me to post on a website so everybody can see it, even though it's terrible. So I really enjoyed it because I'm just like, oh, there's all these different, settings and brushes and stuff that I can use. It's just a lot available to me that I didn't have on paper. And I think my first program was like a Photoshop Elements version that came with the tablet.
elements.
Yeah,
Yes,
so I've been
wow.
using Photoshop for years and I loved it when we used to be able to own it.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, it was like way. I today I think I paid $20 a month, for it, and
yeah.
it's fine. 20 bucks. I mean, gosh, what Storyboard Pro costs is. I mean, I remember when I first used Storyboard Pro, it was like maybe 20 something bucks a month, and now it's like
Yeah.
almost like 100 or something. I mean, it's really pricey now, but um, yeah, I think again, like, that transition to digital, there was also a very brief amount of time, and let me know if you remember this, where HP computers had these laptops with like screens that would flip, and then they came with like little stylus pens. Um,
Okay, yeah, I never had one of those.
I think they were called the TouchSmart brand of computers or something.
Mhm.
And that was actually my first Cintiq because when Cintiqs were out, I literally was like, I couldn't really come to terms with like spending thousands and thousands of dollars on something. I was just like, that's a little too much. I mean, it wasn't like the end of the world, but I just felt like I need to kind of dip my toes and just kind of see if I even like this. Um, which I didn't have a choice. I mean, once the industry was going in a direction, it was going in a direction. But
Right.
I remember using those. I think I still have two of them. My old TouchMart. They still work too, which is hilarious. Um,
Mhm.
Worst stylus pens. They're so cumbersome. Like, I mean, still to this day. Gosh, I was saying Wacom.
I
It's
say
like,
whatever I feel like
you
at the
know,
time.
I always say Wacom, and I always try to correct myself. I'm like, I know I'm saying it wrong. How do I say it right again? But Wacom, I think, right. But they're pens. I mean, I've never really like even the Apple Pencil. I don't know if you've adopted drawing on tablets or anything, but
Yeah.
still feels a little heavy to me. I don't know. I'm just so like in love with the Wacom stylus and just how light and just incredibly like it doesn't even feel like I'm holding anything half the time. It feels like it's just I become one with my styli, but
Yeah, I have an iPad and I have Procreate, but I find that I can pretty much only sketch on the
mm,
iPad. There's something about it where it's like I can't really make a full piece. It just doesn't connect the same way that it
right.
does when I'm on the computer. And I think part of it is because you're right. There's something about the Apple Pencil. It doesn't feel as ergonomic as the Wacom pen. And there's just doesn't feel right whenever I'm using the iPad. So I usually use it to sketch or plan or just doodle. Like I never do anything
Like
big on there.
real,
Yeah.
real like there is one thing that I do have, and it only works on my like older. I've since kind of upgraded to a Mac with like Apple Silicon in it,
Yeah.
whatever. Um, so my Intel base Mac, I had this little. It's like a little dongle made by I think it's called AstroPad or something, but
Oh yeah, yeah.
it clicks in and it just like basically takes your actual computer screen and then just moves it to your iPad.
Mhm.
And if you wire it in, it's like I can do stuff in Storyboard Pro. I can do full, whatever. But even then, it was still felt weird. It felt wonky. Like it did not feel like like what I'm used to, you know.
hmm I think I tried that out several years ago. I
Oh, did
remember that. But I think at the time it was really bad, and there was such a delay because I tried it with Storyboard Pro, and
yeah.
there was such a delay that I'm like, this defeats the purpose of me even trying to do this. Like it's delayed by like 3 seconds or
Oh
something.
my gosh. And if you're goofy like me, please let me know because still to this day, whenever I get a script, I have this thing where like I do not this is definitely pre-COVID, before, doing a lot of work from home, but I remember thinking I need to read my script, but I don't want to be in studio. Like I'd always want to go like to a coffee shop or
Yeah.
the mall, food court. I remember just like never wanting to be where I should be. Like I always wanted to be somewhere else and just like throw my headphones on, listen to some like soft music or, whatever. And then I would thumb like the same way. I would never want to be in studio doing my thumbs. Like I'd always just want to be like other places and maybe even like just the energy of other people. For whatever reason, again, I don't live. I've since moved out of California and now live in Texas. Um,
Uh-huh.
we don't really have like a lot of malls out here anymore, so we just
Yeah.
have like some random coffee shops that all close very early. By the way, like I was so used to going to like coffee shops at like 11 o'clock at night. I'm a total night owl, so I can be up till 2 or 3 in the morning, quite easily. But um, yeah, I always felt like just doing thumbnails and actually and again, I love doing it on paper, which after a while I kind of was like, okay, this is stupid. Like I'm taking up way too much time. I should be just doing this all in Storyboard Pro. Um, but there's just something so magical that I miss about, being able to thumbnail on paper and reconnecting with that. Do you find yourself ever like doing stuff on paper anymore? Or are you totally digital when it comes to your professional stuff or
Yeah, I think it just depends on how I'm feeling at the time. Sometimes I'll want to thumb on paper if if something comes to mind, I'm like, oh, I gotta get it down. I don't even want to turn on the computer or whatever. But I find that since I joined the industry so late, they often don't give us enough time to like think to ourselves. Like you said, going to a coffee shop and stuff and looking at the script. I wish there's no time for that. We got to sit
luxury?
there and we just got to start boarding straight ahead or else. So that would be nice.
So can I ask you this? So like high school, like did you know this was something you really like wanted to do? Like were your parents supportive of you pursuing art as a career? Were they like scared, like, oh my gosh, like this could be a really risky thing? Like what was that experience like?
Yeah, I think they were pretty supportive. I
Okay.
think my dad was scared but supportive because he's a very logical, like left brain person. He's an optometrist, so like he's a
Oh,
very
okay.
like science math guy. And my mom is like the creative artsy person with like the theater and just like, liking that sort of thing. So she was like, yeah, let's try to make it work. Let's go for it. Just because, she likes that stuff and also they could both see my potential. They're like, this makes her happy. I was always entering in like gallery contests and like poster contests and I was winning them. So they're like, well,
Wow.
obviously there's something here, if she's getting ribbons and stuff like that. So they were encouraging. I just think there was a little bit of fear, which I don't blame them, especially now after
Yeah.
seeing how things have ended up. So
Which, I always often say to myself, like especially like coming from the era where like work is plentiful, there's always the next project. I do remember like COVID being so incredible in terms of like there being too much work. Like I remember like literally it was like there's literally like I can't do it. I remember like having
yeah.
offers on different things that was all of them were incredible. But I remember thinking to myself, this is really like something I've never seen before. Either this is like the greatest, era to keep going up, or something big's going to happen and we're not really sure what. Um, And I kind of feel like that now. I feel like, yes, it's kind of collapsed in on itself a little bit. Definitely it's getting more difficult, to book work, and in the traditional sense, I feel like so much has changed. Again, it's almost like the environment has changed around us. We're so used to the way we've existed before. But I do feel now like it's kind of exciting to see so many creators, emerging, so many like independent, people using crowdfunding, and just finding ways to stay creative, to stay in the mix. I do have some friends, a lot of them who, I look up to, leave the industry completely and say
Yeah.
like, it's just time for me to go. I'm going to do something else. And again, like, I always think to myself, like, well, there was a time before all of this. And I think we all remember that time where it's like, yeah, we didn't get paid to draw. We didn't get paid to do, stuff we love. We just had, at least for me, I had a regular job, had, a job that I didn't particularly like. But I do remember art was always something that I could go to whenever life was getting difficult. There was
Mhm.
a magic to it, no matter how hard things got. Um, it was like always there for you. It was always a place you can go to escape, anything that, might be not the best, or kind of feeling discouraged in life, and suddenly, that blank piece of paper, that window,
Mhm.
literally could be anything. And I just
Yeah.
remember thinking to myself, like, feeling very lucky and very fortunate to have ever even participated in that era, especially with so many people that I talk to today on LinkedIn who are still in school right now. Like, they haven't even
Oh, I
entered
can't even imagine being a student right now. Oh my
a lot,
gosh.
a lot of them are actually watching this, and, very much will message me like, they want to know like how, people are going forward in the midst of, so much difficulty, and all that. But the human spirit is a very, very interesting thing, and it's
Yeah.
very, very difficult, to take that passion and that creativity out of a person. Again, if you and me were working at like Ross or something, or the mall, I guarantee we're still drawing. I guarantee we're still
Yeah.
creative, no matter what, we find ourselves doing. Um, but I remember again talking to those old timers back in the day, and they were always saying like, success is something that happens, um, not all the time, but when it does happen, you should always be prepared. You know, um,
Mhm.
and I remember one time they also said, even if it never shows up, you should still be prepared as if it's going to knock on your door tomorrow. And I said, wow, that's so interesting. That no matter what happens, you're still sharpening your skills, sharpening your storytelling, um, constantly. Like, it never ends. That pursuit of excellence, regardless if you're being paid or not, regardless if you're being recognized or not. Um, that really, in a way, doesn't even matter. I think to a lot of us, probably yourself included, because
Yeah.
it's just like within you. Um, how do you navigate the landscape today? Like, or when was like the sort of slowdown? When did you start noticing it, in your career?
Well, it's so interesting because you mentioned, remembering a time where you had normal jobs before animation. I have never known a normal job, and that's kind of the issue I've been navigating is, who wants to hire someone who just worked on cartoons for 7 years, 8 years, however long it's been. Um, so it's been hard for me because I got in when everything was seemingly the best of all time, and I think I got the wrong impression for sure because, it was the first impression that I had. So it was kind of like, "Oh, this is how it has always been, and this is how it'll always be," which is awesome because it seems like there's a lot going on. So it was strange to go from, me trying to break into storyboarding as a PA and then making it, and then suddenly getting a lot of work because it was COVID and being like, awesome, I'm going to be making all this money, on all these shows forever. It's so awesome. And then I'd say beginning of 2024 is when I started to see the writing on the wall that it wasn't going to be back to back gigs and a ton of productions hiring, because I was basically employed, since I graduated up until 2024 with no gaps. And
Wow.
then my
Impressive, by the way.
production.
Very
Oh,
impressive. That is
oh,
very impressive, by the way. Like,
thank you. Um,
incredible.
and then I was on an Oddbot production. I don't know if you've ever worked there, but I was on a preschool show there called Kindergarten the Musical, and that was
Okay.
ending in early 2024 for me. And when I rolled off of that, I very quickly saw that things weren't going to be as easy as I thought they were going to be. And since then, I've only had very little short gigs, and it's been eye opening for sure, having gone from the feast and me thinking that's how it always was and always will be to
Right.
absolute famine. So,
Yeah. Again, like, it to me, um, I remember thinking also, yeah, and again kind of like a weird thing because I had a chance to study at a few places. Uh, one of them in particular, the Animation Academy, um, which at that time, this school was, really sort of like the place to be, even after you got done with your full day of like work, where yeah, I was like, I felt like so amped up. I'm like, I gotta go do more, I gotta learn more stuff, and I'd go take these classes. And I remember the owner of the school was always like, well, you should really like think about teaching, and I'm like, teaching? Like I'm not a teacher. I don't know anything about teaching. He's like, no, he's like, this is a really good thing because it helps to solidify your knowledge. It helps to solidify, what you're learning every day. And he's also it's a great source of secondary income. And I'm like, well, why would I ever need that? I've got
yeah,
my main source of income. But lo and behold, he'd always kind of instill that in me. It's like, try and always have like other stuff going on. And I think that kind of led me to, buying more home equipment, so this is again before COVID, obviously, but I remember I started like, also heavily, love DeviantArt too. That was definitely a great site
I
back
didn't name
in the
drop
day.
it. It was very
Yeah.
formative.
There's like some, definite like, risque stuff on there. It was a really like interesting community. Um,
Yeah,
But I remember too, like a lot of people were. This was like the era of like Craigslist when they were like there was a lot of like different art projects that were going on, and a buddy of mine was like, "Dude, you can find so many like people looking to create animated pilots and different things." So I remember I would like go on there like anytime I had like some time off and just keep doing like other stuff outside of the studio stuff. But anytime like I got a studio gig, I would just like kind of push all that to the side and just be like, like I'm just
yeah,
I want to be back in my element. And I remember like uh when COVID hit, that was such an interesting thing because I feel like so many of us already had like home setups, like we're already kind of like doing things outside of the
for
studio.
sure.
So in a way, like it didn't feel that weird. Um,
Mm-mm.
but it was kind of like an exciting time in terms of like no more commutes, no more having to like fight traffic. I could just literally like click my computer on and like I'm good to go. That was like
Yeah,
kind of an exciting thing. But I remember like going back to what you're saying, when you started noticing the slowdown. I remember I at this point in my career, I was lucky enough to not have to test on a lot of things. Um,
yeah,
And I remember like a lot of things were coming as offers, like, hey, we know who you are, like, please come on to the show, we think it'd be
nice.
great, and again, like, that was just so wonderful. I never expect, I always expect the test. I always expect to have to prove myself, at any point in my career. And I remember the next thing I had gotten was like a thing on Archer. And I remember like everyone was like, okay, like, this is what the schedule is and the whole nine. And I'm like, oh, this would be kind of fun. And then they like sent me like the pay, and it was like, I kid you not, maybe like 17 or $20 an hour.
Are
And
you kidding me?
I was like, maybe it's a mistake. I'm like, there's no, I told my
Yeah.
wife, I'm like, somebody screwed up, it's no big deal. Messaging them back, I'm like, is this correct? Because, this is like what I'm actually, it wasn't a union shop. So, it's like, okay, like, I have my union rates, but anytime I worked non-union, I was like, okay, I kind of had to negotiate a little bit, the whole nine. Said, no, that's all right. And I thought to myself, like, like, why would they offer me that? Like, that doesn't seem right, And they didn't seem like they wanted to negotiate at all. They were like,
Oh my
this is
God.
this is it, take it or leave it. And I remember thinking to myself, well, obviously I'm not going to take it because,
Yeah.
that's ridiculous. Like, why would I ever like, work for that low? And there'll be something new coming right around the corner. And there wasn't. And I was like, like, no one's emailing me. I'm like, I'm going and, messaging friends. I'm like, hey, like, you guys got anything going on? They're like, no, we're just
Yeah.
we're all winding down. No one's really like, getting called back, or seasons are being, not renewed. So yeah, I could definitely feel like, oh wow, like the bubble had burst. But first, you blame yourself. You're like, okay, it's me.
Yeah.
I my work's terrible. I've screwed up. Like I need to go back to the drawing board, rethink everything I've been doing. And like, so it's just a total like, oh, I've screwed this up somehow. And then you start seeing other people going through the same thing. You're like, I love their work. Like, what is going on? So yeah, I think again, like it was a very kind of humbling thing, because I remember thinking to myself, like, kind of felt like it was a little like kind of owed to me in a way. Like I felt like my attitude was not the greatest at that time. And it
Mm.
felt like it kind of brought me back to like, hey, like I need to be like just appreciative of all this, because it is very special. It is very magical that, I get to do something that I enjoy. People love it, and then they pay you well for it, So that's a really kind of magical and exciting thing. And I remember
Yeah.
thinking to myself too, like, well, none of this is actually guaranteed. There was never anything written that says it's going to be easy here on out. It's going to just, everything's going to be handed to you, even though it felt that way. Um, I remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to fight again. I'm gonna have to, go back to my old days and dig deep and actually ask myself hard questions. How much do I really want this? Truly what I want to do with my life. And, so luckily for me at least, the answer is still, yes, however that means, finding more creative ways to do things. It's so funny you talked about Mothman, because I've been doing this little Mothman, project on my own,
Uh-huh.
and I just like absolutely love cryptids. I love this whole
Me
culture.
too.
It's I gotta send it's on my Instagram. I gotta send you, but it's just these little like Gary Larson style Far Side, single little comics, because I'm like, oh my gosh, it'd be so much fun to do these, and then maybe do like little boards out of them, and just these small things. And I think my wife too was like, you need to do this, you need to find other ways to stay creative, because she could kind of see it in me. Like I was just kind of feeling a little bit depressed and feeling like, oh my gosh, things are so bad. And but that's kind of a wonderful thing that she still is like, look, it's at least according to her, she's not in our industry or anything, but she's like, just be prepared, because if things do come back in a big way, like be prepared. I
Yeah.
kept saying I'm gonna cancel my licenses to this and that. She's like, no, keep them, keep them all. She's like, when we put our daughter down to sleep at 8 o'clock or 8:30, she's like, that time's yours from that to 2 a.m. or whatever, however long you want to stay up. That's your creative space. Do something with that.
Right.
So I feel very like fortunate that there's so much support, and I hope too that in these sort of like dark times that you find that as well, and whether that's through friends or family or even like I said, fellow like board artists like myself, I feel like we're all like in it together, and it's
For
good to
sure.
just talk to one another, let each other know that hey, we see you. You're not forgotten. You're not just and those. I mean, you've worked for almost a decade. I mean, that's a huge thing.
It's so interesting though, because it doesn't feel that way. And I think part of it is because of the recent gaps and also because it's felt like a fight the whole time. It was like, all right, fight to get in, fight to become an artist from a PA, and then fight to stay in as an artist. And it makes the time go by so quickly. And yeah, it's nice that you told me that because it does put things into perspective that it's been that long. Yeah.
Yeah, I again, like I said, like I again on LinkedIn, this is my window into the current scene, whatever. But a lot of people, yeah, like some of them are in their late 40s, and they're like, I've never made it in. It's never happened for
Yeah.
me. So in a lot of ways, you kind of have that survivor's guilt of like, oh wow, well, like I was lucky enough to get in, but it's still hard because you want to continue that momentum, you want to continue going forward. But in a way, it's like art itself is asking something different from us, and I know my wife was like, are you willing to adapt to, this new climate? You know,
Yeah.
she likens it to the ice age, like all these top animals who just enjoyed, the sunshine, and
Yeah.
suddenly the world's frozen. Are you ready for that?
Mhm.
You ready to navigate this new environment? Yes, I feel like yes and no. There's still parts of me that are very stubborn, and I feel like I need to do it the way that I know how to do it. But other parts of me feel like wow, I'm getting to really like be more creative. I think in the way that like I spent so much of my career working on other people's dreams that
Yeah.
now it's actually our dreams. It's your dreams, and it's your chance to basically talk to the world and say, "This is who I am creatively." And that's kind of a beautiful thing. I mean, I think again, your generation in particular has a very very special thing because it is almost like a nuclear Armageddon, and like I love watching those movies because it's like, how do they survive? How do they rebuild? So I
Yeah.
think years from now they're going to be definitely studying your generation who was there for like just at the end to like how it was rebuilt, how that it was slowly people rose from the ashes, and the mammals became the leaders of the world type of thing.
I really hope I'll feel like a phoenix rising from the ashes soon enough rather than, the way that I do now. But I'm trying to stay positive because like you said, we have this innate sense of wanting to create regardless of what's going on. I try to stay creative outside of all of this because I just can't help it. My husband also works in the animation industry technically. He's an archivist at the Disney Animation Archives.
You're
So
kidding.
he yeah, yeah. So
Oh my
he's
god.
also very creative. So we're always, coming up with little projects and ideas together. And the big thing that we've been working on recently is we made a indie game studio, and we're working on our first indie game with some of my old friends. So that's been a really nice creative outlet for me, is like exploring the type of stuff that I like to make outside of the studio system. And I'm kind of discovering, like rediscovering what I like to do outside of that. And it's like, oh, I forgot like my own tastes, because I was so busy doing this other thing. So it's been really nice to kind of sit back and do that stuff.
That is so incredible. May I ask, the archive job, is he at like the Frank Wells building, like the actual Disney? I know there was like maybe I'm thinking of like because I had worked there briefly, and there was like an archive there on site. Is it there, or is he like at a different, location doing the Disney archiving?
So I think there's two different locations. I think what you're talking about is like the main Disney archives, and I think
Yeah.
what they do is it's mostly like the live action stuff, like the park stuff. He does specifically the archiving for Disney feature animation. So he's in like this secret building across from the
Okay.
Imagineering campus. They keep it secret because like there's so much like valuable stuff in there that I don't think they want anyone knowing like the actual address.
Oh my
But no,
gosh.
he's near he's in Grandview across from the Imagineering campus in this little building. Yeah.
How exciting. That just to me, like, I would always get to work early, and in that archive, the one at the Frank Wells building at the main studio, I remember it was my first day, and I must have gotten there like an hour to hour and a half early, got parked, like, and I just was like wandering, and I literally like came upon that archive, and it was weird because the doors were open. Nobody was there, but the doors were open. So I said, well, I guess I'm gonna go in, and they had Walt Disney's desk, which was like actually not even behind any ropes or anything. I remember like I
That's
touched it.
weird.
I touched his desk, which I probably should have done, probably like contaminated or something. But I remember thinking
Yeah.
to myself, like, and they had his the stuff from when he went to war, like all his actual, like, his ID, and like, I think he had like lied to get into, World War I, whatever. Uh, they had all these like little trinkets and things from like the early days of the studio. Um, all these maquettes, too, which I really, really love,
Mhm.
from the features and everything. But it was just so exciting to me, to go from that, like you, that kid who was like sitting on, for me at least, carpet, popping in my VHS player and just feeling so connected to this work and so connected to this medium. And then suddenly, like, you're a part of it, suddenly it's like, wow, like we're actually worthy to be within those walls, and create. Um, One place in particular that I never got a chance to work at was DreamWorks. I really admire so much of what DreamWorks has done, and can you kind of go into that, like your experience with DreamWorks? What was that like working with that company?
Well, it was super short-lived because I was only on as like a temp freelancer during, the feast.
Oh,
And
okay.
it was and it was it was during COVID, I think, well, sort of. It was beginning of 2023. So they were very weird about me coming to the campus because I
Oh
didn't
no.
have an actual DreamWorks email. I was freelancing on Gabby's Dollhouse, which was a lot of fun. But I
Nice.
remember the crew was super nice and welcoming, and they're like, "We have got to get you over here for a lunch." You know, they wouldn't let me go to a lunch
Oh
at DreamWorks, and the crew
no.
tried so hard, but whoever was in charge at the time was like, "She's a freelancer. She's not full time. We're not going to let her over here." So I was so devastated because I technically worked for them, but I've literally never been on the campus. I
Oh geez.
feel like I
Yeah.
missed out.
That's kind of like an interesting thing because, in the era again before COVID, you didn't work from home. I mean, even if you were freelance, a lot of times, they would have you at least come in to present your work, and to actually say, here, here's what I have, and they'd give you notes and everything. But you would always at least get like a day pass, to go in and go to a place. But so
This
much of
was
that,
expected for sure.
right? And so much
Yeah.
of it was exciting because you're going to a new place, you're meeting a whole bunch of new people. It was almost like going to high school, like every few months all over again. You're just like, wow, I'm in this whole experience all over, and where's the kitchen? Where do I put my stuff? Like, I remember too, one thing that was really brilliant about my wife. She would see, like, again, I was a commuter, going back and forth, and she's like, you should really try the metro, and I was like, oh gosh, I would never do that. Why would I go on the metro? I have a car, and she's like, no, it's really cool. You can just put your music on your headphones, maybe, and read your scripts, and she's like, it's just such a nice way to commute. And then she started using this thing called a commuter bus. This is again all back, when we were in California. So for
Yeah.
5 years before COVID, I completely stopped driving, and I was using only. I got an e-bike, and I just did only public transportation, and it
Mhm.
was a really like enjoyable thing, where like somebody else was fighting traffic for me. I laugh now because where I live in Texas, it's very like rural. I mean, there's not even like really big buildings or anything, so it's like nothing
Yeah.
but like sky. I mean, just tons of beautiful sky. Um, but sometimes I do kind of miss that, that kind of busyness and, being like downtown LA or, the valley.
Mhm.
A lot of those times are really fun, but yeah, COVID was an interesting time. Like I said, it definitely changed the world in a lot of ways. Um, but I do feel, yeah, like I said, animation is definitely going through a rebirth. It's hard to say like, oh, will it go away? Like, is it just, are kids just not watching stuff anymore and they're just more
Yeah.
focused on shorter media, TikTok, that kind of, short form stuff. But I find, like again, just going off of like my 3-year-old, she's constantly loving animation. I mean, she can watch live action anytime she wants, but she's constantly choosing animated stuff. So I kind of feel like it's not going to go anywhere. Maybe again, it's just going to take, a little more time before it starts being appreciated. All we need is one giant hit. We need one giant
Yeah.
animated hit, and like everyone's going to be like, call everyone, back in, and yada yada. Maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't. But
Yeah, my fear with it is there's so much to watch on streaming now because there's like a backlog of every single thing that's ever been made on multiple streaming services that I'm afraid that the companies are going to be like, why would we ever need to make anything new when kids are just watching a cartoon from the 90s and they're perfectly fine with it because there's like 100 episodes.
right.
And I don't know if that's the case, but like I do wonder that in the back of my mind if they're just satisfied with what already exists because maybe it is working. I don't know.
It's a good thing you say that too, because um, there is so much stuff that's available. I mean, even just like on YouTube, I can find episodes of stuff that really have never, like a lot of shows I was on early on were never released on DVD or never had like a proper release. They're just always, so people, from back in the day obviously recorded all that stuff. And one show in particular, Men in Black, the animated series, which, to the best of my knowledge, I don't think really ever made it to DVD. Maybe it did, or maybe it didn't. But um, I know for my season 3, there were just so many episodes that I felt like I'll never see again. They'll just have to kind of live in my memory. And there was a particular channel on YouTube. I don't know how this guy did it, but he has the cleanest. It looks literally like the episode just debuted the day before. I'm sure he's putting
Wow.
it through some kind of cleaning software. Um, I don't know if it's like something AI, but it looks insanely clean. I mean, it looks so. Most of the stuff I see, it's like very grainy and like it looks like it was from 20 plus years ago. But yeah, he's got some amazing stuff that I'm just so taken by. Um, and again, like I said, I still really feel like this newer generation is definitely appreciates great animation. They're very
That's
much
good.
believers in 2D. So many like high school kids that all they'll send me their work or whatever. I still teach a lot, kind of like 12 and up. And that generation, that chunk of kids, they still really love 2D stuff and they love paper. They're
Oh,
kind of
that's great to hear. Yeah.
it's kind of weird to see how many of them are really burned out on digital and how many of them are very reluctant to draw digital.
Hmm.
So many of them are like, I want to do paper, they just want to do stuff
Yeah.
on paper. And I'm just like, it's such a throwback. I'm just like, wow, like you guys were born in the wrong era, you know?
Yeah, it's come full circle. It's
Right.
crazy.
Yeah, but yeah, I think again, like I said, it's an incredible journey. Like I said, your work's tremendous. I mean, clearly,
Thank you.
you've done some really great work. I really feel like you're just at the beginning. I mean, these, like you said, these 8 years have flown by, and I really hope that the industry will allow itself to really not lose so much of this great talent. I'm excited to know that you're taking your skills and moving them into new spaces, especially like you said with this indie game that you're working on. Are you guys hoping to do sort of like a crowdfunding thing with it, or are you guys going to self fund, or I don't
Right
know?
now, yeah, yeah. Right now, we're self-funding it and seeing where that goes. We've just been paying some old friends who have the skills to help us out because it's a 3D game, and I am a very 2D person, as you can expect, with
Right.
storyboarding.
Right.
So we've been bringing on some people I graduated with, and we've been paying them. And so far, we have the funds. We'll see where that goes, but it's been going
Nice.
good so far.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I really hope that when you guys are ready to launch, you come back as a guest again and we can, do a nice, plug for anything that you're working on. Um, but I really do feel, again, like I said, you coming on is just such a great thing because there's so many people of your generation that I think need to feel uplifted. Uh, what would you like to say to a lot of the people watching, especially ones who are struggling, may have, like you said, worked for a little while and now are having a lot of trouble? Like, well, would you have a message for them? Maybe something they can grab onto?
Yeah, I really think the only solution right now is to just keep creating because that's been kind of my therapy is like I said with this indie game and just drawing for myself and doing projects for myself. You kind of rediscover why you love doing it in the first place. And I think the best thing that we can do during this time is keeping that, skill active and really enjoying what we love the most. And we really shouldn't give up. I think it's a time to grow. I found myself growing in different areas throughout this whole thing. So I think really the best thing is just keep going. And especially if people are really young, they have all the time in the world. And hopefully it'll start to become clear where this whole situation is going. And once it's over, they'll be more than ready to hop in with the skills that they've developed on their own, for sure.
Amazing. Again, like I said, that to me was the most exciting thing about working in this industry is you have so many people who have so many uh, amazing experiences and so much great advice to give, and a lot of times the best, lessons I would learn were all taught to me for free, just people taking the time to like hang out and say, what, you should try to do this, you should try to do that, and challenge yourself in ways you've never challenged yourself before. And
Mhm.
I think it's really exciting that you look at this as a huge sort of time for growth, personal growth, creative growth, like if you were gonna stop or I think it would have happened far before you got into this industry, so
I
I
think
feel
I do wanna say that I think with people like us, we must be very stubborn by nature. We're just built this way because I think all the time, I'm like, I wish I was a normal person who didn't care about this so much because I feel like my life would be a lot easier. But at the same time, I love it so much that I can't really picture myself behaving any other way. So I think that grit and that stubbornness is honestly such a great attribute to have as an artist in this industry, and I feel like we all have it because we have the resilience to get through times like this, and we want to keep doing it. So it's really cool to know that.
absolutely, yeah. And again, I'm so happy that you have a supportive husband, someone who continues to believe in you, and vice
For sure.
versa. Having a great partner in life, is so important. And great friends and people around you that can continue to be there for you, because again, the hard times I feel really like bring out incredible things in people. To me, that human spirit is just something else, that
Hmm.
really cannot be replicated, in any other form. And like you said, whether it's stubbornness or, just absolutely like believing this tunnel vision of just like, I know what I
Yes.
want, I know what I'm going to achieve. And, I'm just going to do it until it happens. Um, that's a beautiful thing. You don't even need 10 of those people. Just one is like, is enough,
Yeah.
So, um, again, I really, really want to thank you so much for you taking this time, Rachel, to speak to my audience. Again, if all you guys can please check out Rachel's work. She's an incredible talent. And I'm sure, if you guys have questions or, want to reach out to her to look at some of your stuff, if she has the time, hopefully she can, do that for you guys. Um,
Of course.
if I may, where can people find you? Where do you? I know maybe you have like a professional thing if someone wants to hire you, and then also where can people follow you? If I may ask.
Yeah, so I conveniently have the same username everywhere. I
Okay.
feel like I was smart enough to do that. I changed it to like a professional tag several years ago. I'm Rachel Greenart on basically everything. I'm most active on Instagram and Blue Sky. And I'm also on TikTok. I'm trying to kind of start that up too. I wasn't
Nice.
really a fan at first, but I'm trying to use it as a creative outlet as well. So I'll be posting more on there soon.
Exciting. And if someone wants to hire you professionally, is LinkedIn still okay to reach out to you on, or are you just more comfortable, on any of those other platforms?
LinkedIn is great. I like being emailed directly because I have notifications on my phone and I'll see it right when it pops up. But honestly, anywhere I'm pretty active and I check DMs and I check messages, so anywhere
Nice.
works.
Very nice. Well, thank you again. I truly appreciate you taking the time, and best of luck on your projects going forward. And please
Thank
keep us
you.
in mind when you're ready to say a little bit more about this tremendous game you're working on. I'd love to have you back on, and maybe you can share some footage or have
Yeah.
some more for my audience to check out.
Absolutely. We're gonna need to really market it because right now we have absolutely no audience. So it'll be interesting to see how that launch goes. So
Great. Well, you have us here at the ADC Podcast. We're all behind you. So
great, thanks.
wonderful. Thank you.